When Tristan first saw Isolde across the crowded hall, it was love at first sight. He knew he had to have her, even if it meant defying his best friends and breaking his king's heart. Just another typical day in medieval Ireland. Join us today as we look back at one of history's most famous romances and find out how Tristan and Isolde's love defied destiny. Our story begins not with Tristan and Isolde, but with King Mark of Cornwall and his best friend, Sir Tristan. They were thick as thieves, sharing a love of hunting, jousting, and beautiful women. But all that would change when King Mark asked Tristan to escort his sister Isolde to Ireland. See, Isolde was being sent to marry a local chieftain, a man she didn't know, and who she would only wed under protest. To soften the blow, King Mark decided to send along his best friend and loyal knight, Sir Tristan, so that she wouldn't be entirely alone during the long journey. But Isolde had other ideas. She had heard tales of the handsome Tristan and didn't want anything to do with him. So she did the one thing she could think of to get out of marrying some random dude. She took a vow of chastity. And while technically she wasn't being disobedient, since she wasn't breaking any laws or royal decrees, it still really upset her brother, the king, who was very much looking forward to having a brother-in-law as cool as Tristan. Meanwhile, Tristan was super bummed that his best friend's sister didn't want anything to do with him. His attempts to woo her were hilariously unsuccessful, which made him even more determined to make it work. So what was he going to do? Well, he went to the one place any heartbroken medieval guy would go, the apothecary, hoping to buy some magic love potion to win her heart. Now, while apothecaries were real people with real jobs, they weren't quite like modern pharmacists. They also dabbled in herbalism, alchemy, astrology, and a little bit of witchcraft. Sometimes they were trusted to create concoctions that induced vomiting or even fixed broken bones. Other times they were feared for making poisonous antidotes and even worse love potions. Now, there are a lot of theories about who invented love potions, but nobody knows for sure. They first appear in written history around the time of ancient Greece and Rome. And believe it or not, they were pretty popular for hundreds of years. There was even a whole industry of women who sold their love potions in taverns and brothels. And since they were considered a woman's secret weapon, men were forbidden from buying or selling them. Apparently, the active ingredient was usually something a woman would know, but a man wouldn't, like menstrual blood or urine. And that brings us back to Tristan, who probably thought these love potions were a bunch of BS, but would try anything to win Isolde's heart. After all, what's a little crazy if it means getting the girl? So he went to the apothecary and asked for something strong enough to make Isolde fall in love with him. The apothecary listened to his tale of woe and then told him to come back in 3 days. When he returned, the apothecary handed him a small vial filled with a black liquid and told him to put a few drops in Isolde's wine. Then he waited patiently for her reaction. The next day, Tristan snuck into Isolde's chambers and dropped the love potion into her goblet. Then he hid under her bed, heart pounding, waiting for her to drink the potion and fall into his arms. Instead, she drank the entire bottle without a single word. Just as Tristan was about to crawl out from under the bed, completely dejected, she turned to him and said, "You must take me away tonight, Sir Tristan. My brother finds out I've taken a love potion. I will be killed." Now it seemed that the potion worked a little too well. They quickly slipped out of the castle and into the night, escaping to a small cottage outside of town, where they could lay low for a bit. In the morning, Tristan returned to the apothecary to ask for another love potion, this one to make Isolde fall madly in love with him. The apothecary agreed and gave him another vial of black liquid. But once Tristan gave it to Isolde, she told him, "Do you wish to poison me?" And that's when he realized that something was very wrong. The apothecary hadn't given him a love potion. He'd given him a sleeping draught. It turned out that the apothecary was actually an old mentor of Tristan S., who had been secretly tutoring Isolde as well. And after realizing the two young nobles had fallen in love with each other, he helped them escape, knowing that King Mark would never accept a relationship between them. The two lovers were overjoyed and spent many happy years together in their cottage, though they were forced to hide their love from the world. Unfortunately, their happiness didn't last forever. Their secret was eventually discovered, and Isolde was banished from the kingdom. However, before she left, she promised to return as soon as she had made a pilgrimage to the tomb of a Christian martyr named Tristram. When Isolde was gone, Tristan threw himself into his work, becoming a fierce warrior and winning many battles for King Mark. He didn't see Isolde again for several years. Then suddenly she returned to Cornwall, walking through the gates of the city with a band of Irish warriors. But she wasn't there to see Tristan. She had come to marry a young lord named Sir Kehytus. But everyone knew that she had only agreed to the marriage to protect herself from harm. In reality, she was still in love with Tristan. Tristan was devastated by her betrayal, but it wasn't his place to question his king's choice of bride. He attended the wedding in full regalia and watched as Isolde walked down the aisle towards her new husband, and something incredible happened. Just as she and Caius were about to exchange vows, Tristan stepped forward and claimed that he had once been promised to Isolde, and that no one else could have her. The two men dueled, and while they fought, Isolde stood between them, begging them to stop. But they wouldn't listen until she cursed both of them and predicted that they would both die within a year, and that Tristan would join Isolde in death. Despite her prophecy, King Mark awarded the duel to Caius and banished Tristan from Cornwall forever. Devastated and heartbroken, Tristan sailed away from the kingdom that had once been his home. As predicted, Isolde and Caius died exactly 1 year later, leaving the throne to King Mark, grief-stricken and guilt-ridden. He finally agreed to let Tristan return to Cornwall, but only so that he could tend to his dying friend's wounds. In the end, Isolde and Tristan were reunited, but only for a short time. When Tristan learned that there was no hope of curing Caius, he prepared for his own death. He told Isolde that she should forget him and move on with her life, but she refused, saying she would rather die by his side than live without him. And that's exactly what happened. They died together in each other's arms, proving that their love truly defied destiny. So who were Tristan and Isolde? Well, it's hard to say. Unlike many myths and legends, there is no definitive answer. Over the centuries, the story has been retold and revised so many times that it's impossible to tell where the legend ends and the myth begins. What we do know is that the earliest surviving version of the tale dates back to the 12th century. It was written by a man named Thomas of Britain, who wrote most of his stories while imprisoned in France. In his version, Tristan and Isolde's love was doomed from the start, because Isolde was promised to King Mark before she ever met Tristan. Also, it was Isolde, not Tristan, who put the sleeping draught in Mark's wine. But as time went on, the story changed. It was eventually rewritten so many times that Tristan and Isolde became one of the most famous couples in Western literature. And while their original story may have been about unrequited love, over time, Tristan and Isolde became a metaphor for romance itself. Two star-crossed lovers whose passion for each other was stronger than any obstacle. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our other videos on passionate medieval love stories, like Eleanor and Henry II, or Mary Queen of Scots and Lord Darnley. Thanks for watching.